Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video I want to talk to you about the firmware level ergonomics of my split mechanical keyboard. I have talked before about the hardware considerations and I have explained how those have helped me deal with my repetitive strain injury, with the pain I had in my wrist and with the pain at the base of my forearm. The latter of which is still there but is getting better over time, so I am recovering from it. So I have explained how the split itself allows me to place the two halves far apart from each other and type in a position that does not create awkward angles at the wrist or at the base of the forearm, and so this is more comfortable and doesn't put stress on the various muscles. And I have also explained how this tenting here, this angle that I put the keyboard on the desk, how this angle helps put the arm at a more natural angle rather than having it flat on the surface like that. What I haven't discussed though, what I haven't commented on, are the more subtle things, the things that are not readily apparent, but which are critical for a comfortable typing experience. And those pertain to the firmware, so the kind of configurations I do for how keys work here, and also to the keycaps and the number of keys as well. So let me start with the firmware and the number of keys, because these are closely correlated. In a split keyboard, you will typically have a thumb cluster. The whole point of the split keyboard is to let go of the idea of these huge space bars, which are wasteful, and instead of one key, have many keys in their stead, and so you can make better use of your thumb. This is a good idea because you have more functionality under your hand, and thus you don't need to use your pinky to reach far away into the edges of the keyboard, for example, to do a backspace or to do a tab, that sort of thing. You can have it under your thumb. So this is great, but it also comes with a considerable downside, which is if you don't take care of how you use the thumb cluster, you will start developing pain at the base of your thumbs, and eventually that pain may go into the wrist, and that of course is not nice. What we want is to have a more comfortable experience throughout, and not to move the pain from the wrist to the thumb, from the thumb to the forearm, and so on. It has to be comfortable for every part of our body. And so, with regard to the thumb cluster, it's important for you to think about how you access keys here and what kind of angles you are using to do so. Of course, much of that will depend on the size of your palm, the length of all your fingers. In my case, you can see how it is. I will just have it here at the home row, and then you can see how I can access all the thumb keys without really having to do any kind of awkward twisting or curling. So I don't have to do a motion like this or a motion like this. It's just all natural here. It's all close by. But I still have made the conscious decision to place here taller keycaps than here. I have actually changed the keys than the ones I was using, the caps rather. Here I was using another color of caps, but I changed it so that it is easier for you to see. So this is the F6 key, and the function keys in the cherry profile, which I am using, are the tallest keys in the set. So it's F key here, F key here, and the same on the other split. And so I have the two tallest keys here at the edges, and the inner keys are the shortest keys are the keys that we find, for example, N, M, it's the same height as those. So here we have NM, this kind of height, and here we have the function keys. So the idea is that by having a different height here, it's easier for me to not have to go all in into the key in order to hit it. Because if these are exactly the same height, then what you have to do is you have to curl your thumb more to hit the key without hitting this other key instead. So in the interest of accuracy, you want to have different heights here. You want it to be sculptured like this. You don't want it to be uniform, because uniformity means that you go all in, you curl, and then you press. Or in this case, you stretch and then you press. And of course, stretching or curling, and if you do that frequently, is an awkward motion that will cause you damage. You don't want to have that. It's good to have it like this, because then you can just touch it at the edge, and this registers a key. Touch it, and this registers a key. So if you see here, maybe I can do it here. If you see here, I can just be there. I don't have to go all in. I don't have to curl deeply and then press. I can just be there, and that's it. And that's a key press. And of course, what helps with this is the switches that you have. If you have really heavy switches, then of course this won't work, right? Because this will not count as a key press. You will have to press and hold further, and of course by doing that, again, you are applying more pressure. So here the key switches are really light. They are featherweight. I talked about them before. These are the Keychron switches, the silver variant, which has a very low actuation force and pre-travel. So this is a key press, actually, like this. It's really featherweight. You barely touch it. Same for all the keys, of course, but the combination of the light switch and the taller caps makes it so that all the thumb keys here are easy to access, and they don't lead to these stressful kind of motions. Now, the firmware level consideration here is to have keys that don't require a press and hold action. The way I have laid the keys here is the Alt key, here is the space key, here is the control key, and here is the shift key. And on the other side, I have, again, the same idea, Alt, Shift, Control, and here is the Enter key. The Enter and the space also double as layer keys. We will go into that a bit later. But now let's focus on the modifiers. Modifiers normally are keys that you press and hold. And of course, if you do this with your thumb, that's a really bad idea, especially if you have to be curling or stretching. You don't want that. Maybe it's okay if you do it for the position where you rest your thumb. Maybe here it's okay, and here. But if you have to do this and you press and hold, or if you have to do this and you press and hold, that will quickly harm you. So what I have done here to further improve the comfort, further to what I said earlier with the height, is to have one-shot modifier keys. This is a feature of QMK. This is a feature of the firmware itself, where instead of pressing and holding, I can tap, and then within a given time frame, which you can configure, you press another key, and that counts as a modifier key. For example, here is the control key. If I want to do Control J, I can tap Control, and then within 5 seconds, I think I have it 5 seconds, and then within 5 seconds, if I press J, it is the same as if I had done Control J, as if I was holding down Control and hitting J. So Control J. This is the idea. Of course, in practice, Control J, I will do it with 2 hands. So it will be Control here and J with the index. But I'm now just doing this for illustration purposes. But you have to understand that it's always two-handed action. So tap and tap again, and that counts as a modifier key, which is fantastic because now you are not putting any kind of stress on your thumb. And this also means now that it's easier for you to have another functionality of QMK, which is the modifier lock. And again, this is configurable. In my case, I have configured it so that a double tap will lock that key in, and it will be as if I am pressing and holding it. So double tap control means that everything you type afterwards will be as if you were holding down control. So if I double tap and then do NK, this is the same as Control N, Control K, for example. And then once you want to release the lock, you tap again the modifier, and that releases the lock. This is really nice for the shift key. Imagine you have a hold operation for the shift key and you want to input some caps, and then you have to press and hold, and you will be typing to input the capitalized keys. Again, pressing and holding combined with curling, that's a terrible idea. But even pressing and holding without curling, it's still not as comfortable as doing double tap and then you type what you need to type and then tap again to release. For me, this is really comfortable, and it's something that I use a lot. All my modifiers have this one shot and then this lock functionality. So all of them, as well as some other keys which I will cover a bit later. And for me, this is very nice, especially when I use Emacs, which is what I do all the time, because Emacs keys involve the use of modifiers, and you want this to be as comfortable as possible. For example, the default key binding to open a file in Emacs is Control X, Control F. So, of course, you can press and hold Control and do X and F, but if you do this all the time for everything that Emacs uses, that gets tiresome. So for Control X, Control F, I will do double tap, X, F, and tap again, and I am good to go. This is more comfortable for me, less stressful for the thumb. This is the idea. It might be slower, but when you consider ergonomics, you don't do it for the sake of speed. If all you care about is speed, that's a different consideration. When you care about ergonomics, you are optimizing for comfort. And on this point, it's really important to know what you are working towards. Because if you don't know what you are working towards, then chances are that you will be working against it without realizing it. So you want to be mindful of your choices, and you want to be careful of how each of them contributes and works towards your telos, your goal. So back to this point of the one-shot modifiers, the modifier lock, and then the number of keys involved. I said here that this is space, the other one, the other red key is enter, sorry. So this is space, this is enter, and both of them activate the same layer. Layers are, of course, a feature of the firmware again, where you can add keys on that layer. So, for example, here is the letter Y, but if you hold down the layer and press Y, then something else is sent instead. So what I have here, because the red keys are very easy for me to access, is to have a hold operation there. It is okay for me to have a hold operation, and this is actually the only hold operation I have. So this is space when tapped, but when you hold it, it activates the layer. Same for here. Enter when tapped, when you hold it, it activates the layer. They both activate the same layer, which is a layer that has navigation keys on this side, and on this keys it has lots of symbols that I use. The exact arrangement doesn't really matter. What matters is that in terms of comfort, this is the only layer that involves, or rather the only situation that involves pressing and holding. Everything else is one shot or the lock behavior. There is, however, something to be said about the number of keys. you will see many custom split keyboards that have fewer keys than this. So this is the Iris keyboard by Keybio, keeb.io, K-E-E-B.io. And the Iris keyboard has six columns by 4 rows. But you will see many keyboards that have 3 rows and 5 columns. And maybe they even have fewer keys on the thumb cluster, maybe 3 or even 2. For me, this was a conscious decision. I didn't want to have too few keys. I prefer to have a few more keys, and I will explain why that is. If you remove the number row here, then it means that you will put the numbers behind the layer. Let's imagine that instead of 6 being here, you bring it to where the letter Y is. And so you will access 6, for example, by pressing and holding a layer key and then 6, okay? Now, if you do this for all the keys, it means, of course, that you will be pressing and holding more. And it's something that I didn't want to do. For example, in Emacs, we have many keys that will involve the number. And for example, we have Control X1 to dismiss all the other windows and focus on the window that we are working on. So if you were to do this with layers involved, it would have to be Control X, and then you would press and hold, and then the key where 1 is. For example, if 1 is under Q, you will do Control X, layer, and Q to have that. And for me, this was not a good idea, because I was like, it's so totally okay. It's very easy for me to reach the keys here. It's totally okay to have an extra row than to use the thumbs more. And for me, this was the idea, because I was like, I don't need to make it look cooler but be less comfortable. I want it to be more comfortable. I am optimizing for that. I am working towards that goal. And so I will not be working towards some arbitrary goal of having fewer keys or whatnot. Same idea for the outer column here. Of course, you can work without it. It's totally possible to work without it, and then you have layers, or you will have a press and hold functionality for some of the keys on the home row. There are many things you can do with QMK, with firmware tweaks, but for me, an extra column makes total sense, and it's why I wanted a keyboard that has a few more keys. Here I have a function layer. It is one shot again, but it's also a lock behavior. So you hit this, and then you do, for example, if I want to have the volume up, volume down, so tap this and then do the volume up, and then tap and do volume down. If I want to do the volume many times, double tap and then do here until you find the right thing, and then tap again to release the function lock. So this is a function layer. Same idea on the other side. Everything I say about the thumbs and here the outer columns is mirrored. So this is a function layer. This is the repeat key, which is a feature of QMK. And the repeat key is very useful when you do something that you want to repeat, but is actually awkward to input again. For example, in Emacs, we have key bindings that allow you to move from one symbolic expression to the next. For example, when you are working with Lisp code. And you can do meta, so the alt key, meta control and N, for example, to go to the next symbolic expression. P to go to the previous, F to go forward, B to go backward. So imagine you want to go 2 times N. Of course, you can do meta control N, and you are there. But you can also input it once and then do the repeat, and you go down that way. And for me, this is something that I use quite frequently, and I find it really comfortable, and I am grateful that this feature exists. Maybe I will do more with it, because there is a way for you to make this more smart. It's not smart right now in my configuration, but maybe I will do it. But even as it is, as just generic repeat the last input, even then it's really nice. Then I have the super key, and the super key is something that is reserved for my window manager or desktop environment, and it is one shot again or double tap to lock it in, and it will then do what I have for the window manager. I don't use this frequently, so it's totally okay for it to be on the pinky. And the pinky is fine anyway. It's not that it is a problem. The problem with the pinky is when you press and hold. This is the problem. And of course, if you have to twist your hand, that's a problem. But just actuating a key, it's totally fine. And here I have a special key. This is a custom modifier that I made, which is Control and Alt simultaneously. Again, one shot or lock behavior. So instead of doing Alt, Control, and N, you do this and N. Of course, imagine two-handed use, okay? Again, I am just demonstrating here. So you do this and N, this and P, this and K, this and L, whatever, okay? And then it's really comfortable for me to use Emacs this way. If I didn't have this column, so if I was trying to reduce the number of keys, then this kind of functionality would have to be somewhere else. Maybe it would be in the form of home row modifiers where you press and hold, which remember I don't want to do, but where you press and hold and then you hit a key. But then I would have to press and hold two keys and then hit another, or I would have to put this behind the layer, which means again holding the thumb and then doing that and then hitting another key. Either way, it would be awkward for something that shouldn't be awkward. So for me, it is better to have more keys and make the functionality easier for me. Again, though, it depends on how you use the keyboard. If you don't use Emacs keys, for example, and you use Vim keys, or if you don't code in Lisp and you just do something else, then you may not need this. That's totally fine. There is no one size fits all. There is no good design in a vacuum. It all depends on the specifics of your case, on what you are working towards. So please keep this in mind and don't just do what everybody is doing. Don't just make decisions on the basis of what looks cool, on what the trendy kids are doing or so on. Be mindful, be considerate, and make choices that make sense for your case. So this is it, folks. Finally, I must say that the cherry keycaps here are really nice because of this sculptured design that they have. And it's not just cherry, of course. Other keycaps have this. And for me, that is really nice because it makes it easier to actuate keys. Same idea here again, right? You don't need to go all the way and hit it. You can just hit it there, and that's totally okay. So yes, there is that, and is why I wouldn't want to use uniform keys. I think uniform keys would actually be more difficult to use, especially what I mentioned earlier about the thumb cluster, but I imagine it would also be more difficult the further away you get from the home row. Whereas this allows you to still have full control. You see, I can still reach everything just fine, and it's not awkward to use. So this is it, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. Again, ergonomics is about comfort. We are working towards comfort. We are not optimizing for speed. We are not optimizing for acoustics. We are not optimizing for something else, even if those are nice in their own right. The goal here is to have something that is good for our health. Thank you very much for your attention, folks. Take care, and goodbye for now.